successor, and she did not want Elizabeth to be her successor. Why? Exactly. So you have this pattern set up by Constantine of religion sets the stage, and then you come down all these centuries and people are doing it all along. You get Mary, who's Catholic, who says this is the religion of England, even though Henry Tudor, her father, had really left the Roman Catholic Church and called himself what?
Head of the church.
Okay, translate that into a Protestant language. Not Pope, but
He said head of the church.
head of the church, head of state and church. So he had total power. Of course, he was also a megalomaniac. He was crazy. He wasn't crazy. Henry was not crazy, but he was a megalomaniac, meaning he wanted all the power, and he also wanted a son. So he marries Catherine of Aragon, who was his brother's wife. Brother Arthur dies. He marries Catherine. Catherine gives him a daughter, i.e. Mary, Catholic. He divorces her through a very, very, very long process in which Thomas Cranmer helps him. That's how Thomas Cranmer comes into the picture. It's because he was not only a priest, but he also had law background. You can read all of that in this. You can also read it in a book called Thomas Cranmer that's about that thick, and I'm about that far through it.
You need it on audio.
No, you would fall asleep on that
You think
one.
they'll make a movie?
I'm sorry?
You think they'll make a movie?
Thomas Cranmer? They'd have to just wickedly condense it. So Henry gets divorced from Catherine and marries who?
Anne Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn. Okay? Anne's young, she's beautiful, she's a conniver. Okay, she'll give him a son. Who does she give him?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. So, grade schools, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Boom, boom, boom. So, divorces Catherine, marries Anne. Beheads her because he decides that she's had all of these affairs. Well, guess what? He was the one who was having the affairs, but she didn't give him a son, and so she has to go. After that, he marries...
The second Boleyn.
No. No, not the other Boleyn sister. That's a movie
Oh, okay.
and a book. Who does he marry after that? Somebody help me out because I can't remember what her name was.
I'm blanking too.
I want to say Anne, but I'm not sure that that's right. Anyway, she gives him a son. I'm sorry?
Want me to Google it?
Well, there's a song about it. We should sing the song.
Oh, it's in the movie. I forget who is he.
If you watch the Showtime Tudors series,
Yeah.
she gives him a son, i.e. Edward. But she dies not in childbirth, but very soon thereafter. That's it on the children. Anybody else that he marries, he doesn't have any more children. So that's it. So Edward being the son, even though he's the youngest, when Henry dies, Edward becomes king. Edward is surrounded by Protestants because Henry has brought all of these reformers into his cabinet and into his life. And so Edward is really just surrounded by them. He goes along with that because he is a child, as we have said. He dies at the ripe old age of 16. Okay? I do not know why. I cannot remember for the life of me why, but he does.
Yes, Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour, there we go. Okay.
And then
Her brother Thomas will come into the picture later.
And Anne.
So
Yeah.
Jane Seymour gives him a son, i.e. Edward. He becomes king. Edward dies. Next in line is Mary. You have Bloody Mary. You have 8 years of persecution. She dies by either poisoning or cancer, depending on what you read. And then you've got Elizabeth. So, we now have Elizabeth. We have the golden age, as it were, of England at this particular moment in time. So, if you will take your book, please. I may need some help because these glasses are not great for reading, but I think maybe we can do this. So, page 58, if you would, in your book, please. If someone would go to the bottom of page 58, I don't want to read too much, but I want to read a little bit. If someone would read that paragraph at the very bottom of page 58, beginning with when.
When Elizabeth took the throne, England was a mess. Religious unrest, fear, and confusion reigned. Faced with warring Protestants and Catholics, she knew she had to find a compromise, a middle way. Elizabeth wanted all English Christians to feel welcome at their church. Her solution wasn't a Church of Geneva Protestant or a Church of Rome Catholic, but something unique in more than just name, the Church of England.
Okay. So she brought, as you said, Ethel, via media, she brought the two together. So if you ask someone like Linda, sitting here, born and raised Roman Catholic, correct? Okay. Look at this prayer book, come to Eucharist, does it sound familiar? The answer would be
Yes.
yes. Okay. If you ask a Baptist, come to service, look at this prayer book, read it, come to Eucharist, does it sound familiar? The answer would be
No.
no.
Correct.
It would be no.
That's right.
We are far more Catholic than we are Protestant.
Oh, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Oh, we all.
I mean,
I mean,
how about those
Liturgical.
articles in the back of the prayer book?
Liturgically. Maybe not in the articles. The articles are very Protestant. Yes, I agree with
And,
that.
and when were those articles adopted by the
Oh,
church?
far too long
I'll bet
ago.
during Elizabeth's time.
Yes, the 39 Articles of Faith, if you have a prayer book, they are articles of religion, there are 39 of them, 1801, so after.
Well, yeah, that's
after
when it was
Elizabeth.
adopted by the Episcopal Church.
Right,
But they were, that was in the English church well before that.
1549 was the first book of Common Prayer, it just says
So that was Henry
1801.
VIII.
Anyway,
Sorry,
they are articles of faith, I have read through them, they're not really contemporary, they don't really, we don't follow them very well, let's just put it that way, in the Episcopal Church now. We
But
really,
that's
we
because we're not as Protestant as the Episcopal Church was in 1803.
correct. Well, you're right, Charlie, you're absolutely right. Because it was, but then you have all of these other movements that we're not going to get into, you'll read about them in here. Okay, so we have a tripod form of tradition. Now, when I was in seminary, the best way that we learned it was by this funny little phrase, broad and hazy, high and crazy, low and lazy. So you have three forms within the Episcopal Church. You have broad church, kind of, you know, everything's okay, and we can be Protestant, and we can be Catholic. It's very broad, and we'll work with that. High church, very Catholic. Smells and bells, okay. You're probably using Rite 1 or the 28 prayer book. We have churches in this diocese that still use the 28 prayer book, or only use Rite 1,
We're
okay.
not allowed to do that.
I'm sorry?
We're not allowed to do
You're not supposed to.
that. We were told by the bishop.
That's right. And you would be told by this rector. Okay, low and lazy. Which basically means, yeah, you use the prayer book, but you can use other stuff. So you've got this tripod of ways of doing worship. But really what Elizabeth wanted was that
Via
via media. Okay, that's what she was looking for, because she knew you have the Catholics, you have the Protestants, you've got to be able to bring them together, and how are you going to do that? Book of Common Prayer.
Common prayer.
And
It
thanks.
didn't work. I mean, the Catholics never accepted, I mean, you still had Jesuits coming in and Catholics plotting to overthrow her.
Oh yeah, was
And-
Elizabeth loved by everybody? Absolutely not.
You know, I mean, the reason that the Church of England became the English became so anti-Catholic was in part because, I mean, there were Catholics who tried to burn down Parliament. I mean, that's Guy Fawkes, right? And so every year, you know, it was Guy Fawkes Day. It was like July 4th. You know, it was, and you hang him in effigy because
Yes.
here's the, you know, it was the Catholics were seen as the terrorists trying to destroy, and you know, so then when you get James II becoming tolerant and probably actually of Catholics and probably actually becoming a Catholic, he was thrown out. He was removed. He inherited the crown of England, and then they had the Glorious Revolution. So, I mean, England, by the time of the American Revolution, England had definitely identified as Protestant, and they were, you know, when Louis XIV revoked the Edict of Nantes and expelled all the Protestants from France, they were accepted in England, and they even when the ones that came to America became Anglican when religiously they were closer, I think, to the Presbyterians, you know,
Calvin,
because they were Calvinists.
Calvinist.
And but the English helped them so much that they became Anglicans. So I mean, I think that, you know, it's unfair to suggest that the tradition of the Episcopal Church in the United States was not. I mean, remember what the name of the when they decided they could no longer call themselves the Church of England because we had a revolution and we're no longer a British colony. What did they call the new church?
The Protestant Church of the United States.
The Protestant Episcopal
Church of the United
Right,
States.
but they snuck that word Protestant in there.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, I mean, it seems to me that at least early on, or, you know, at least probably into the 20th century, they figured this was a Protestant church.
But I would say that because of the Book of Common Prayer, we do have that middle way. You know, we have a lot of Roman Catholicism, whether we want to admit it or not, we have a lot of Roman Catholicism in our liturgy and in our theology. It's right there. Okay, let's turn, if you would, in your books to page 112.
Is there a testity on this? Because I am not keeping up.
No, just watch the video again.
A few dozen times and I'll get it.
Are you really hot? Should I turn this on?
Open the door. Yeah, that would be good.
Anyone,
Do you want me
cookies
to
falling
turn
up?
the fans on?
Oh,
These are
I mean,
awesome.
they-
I know, I
they
already
come
had
on
to,
low,
but I'll have
and
to.
I go,
okay. Yeah, why don't you turn them on low?
Lauren, did you make these cookies? Because they're awesome.
I did.
Well, that gives I have to help.
Which means, Chris, that you didn't have to bring your Oreos
I
tonight.
didn't, but I started a trend, I think. I like this trend too.
The cookie share ain't gonna be
Say
on the
something
video.
about this high and low. I
Yes.
remember when I was growing up, my girl, we were childhood friends, and she went to what they consider a high Episcopal church.
In the area, in this area?
No, in Philadelphia,
Philadelphia.
I grew up.
Okay, thank you,
And
Lauren.
I went to we just called high and low. We never said, you know, it was the middle. I guess it was the middle. And you were sort of looked down upon, or not as prestigious. Your church was not as prestigious if you were not a high Episcopal church. So I do remember that.
Well, you have churches in this diocese, such as St. Paul's K Street, high, really, really high. Also, like from 1928, they do not allow women on the altar, at all. St. Paul's K Street is totally male-oriented. I'm sorry, guys, I would have problems with that? No, I'm not sorry, I would have problems with that. And so, but then you've also got churches like St. Luke's in Washington DC, a traditional African-American church, and they are quite high in their liturgy because they use smells and bells every single service. Okay, do you all know what I mean by smells and bells? Incense and what's
Sanctus bells.
Sanctus
And
bells.
to
If we use them at St. Bartholomew's, what would people do?
sneeze.
Yeah.
Drink a
What were Sanctus bells used for originally? Think Middle Ages. What were they originally used for?
Make people kneel.
Not so much kneel, but what do you do when you kneel? You're
Bow your head.
Bow your head, you're paying
Paying
attention,
attention.
okay? So the Sanctus bells were used to alert the people who were outside the gate that the priest was elevating the bread. At the sign of the elevation, if you were outside that whole altar and sanctuary area, you were quiet because the elevation of the bread. Now, whether you got to partake of it or not is a whole nother question. But at that point, you would stop what you were doing and bow. So that's where the Sanctus bells comes from. It's a call for stopping what you're doing. It is simply now used in churches because it's historical, but it really has lost its original meaning. Okay, so, page 112.
I have a question about, you're saying St. Paul, they don't allow women to
Uh-huh.
be the clerk. Is it unofficial? Because how could they, I thought if they were in the Washington area, they would, like everybody is basically the same, so it's not. I mean, is it just part of the church who they select?
It's part of,
Or is it
it's
against?
part of their tradition. It is very much part of St. Paul's K Street tradition that they do not allow women on the altar. I do not know what they do with our current bishop, Bishop Buddy, who is a woman.
Yes.
I have no idea what they do with her. I'm thinking that they don't have a choice and she celebrates the Eucharist and she's up on the altar. I do know that there is a church that is now has left the diocese and is part of the Roman Catholic Church, St. Luke's Bladensburg. When Bishop Dixon, do you all remember Bishop
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, we have Bishop Buddy, go back one, Bishop Chain, go back one, Bishop Dixon, okay? When she was here, the priest of St. Luke's Bladensburg sat in the back row, turned his back to her and read the newspaper. So, yeah, exactly.
How do you think God felt about that?
That's a man.
What are we here for?
You didn't hear that on the recording.
We can delete that later.
That's one of the reasons that they are now with the Roman Catholic Church. So you have this really broad way of worshiping in any number of parishes. I mean, this diocese has 89 churches in it, and most of them are pretty similar, but not all of them. So you have ones like St. Paul's K Street, and a lot of people love St. Paul's K Street because it's high church and it's very royal and it's very regal and it really makes you feel like you're worshiping. But there aren't any women anywhere except out in the congregation. Now that's the last I heard.
Are the women on the vestry?
I don't know, Charlie. There might be, but I don't know.
I'll bet they have an altar guild, but they don't, because altar guild doesn't serve during service.
That's right. I bet you they do have an altar guild. I just know. There you go, Janet. Well, you just start going to St. Paul's K Street and get them.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So look at that diagram on page 112. Where did all these churches come from? So you have the Catholics, but then you've got the Orthodox, the Roman Catholics, the Anglicans, the Protestants, but each one of them has split in any number of different ways. And so everybody says, well, we originally came from Catholicism. Well, you did, but that was a long time ago and a very meandering direction, because out of Anglicanism you also have the Episcopal Church. You've got charismatic Episcopalians. You've got, again, the high and crazy, low and lazy, broad and hazy kind of way of thinking. You've got the Protestant churches, which have split again and again and again and again. So we all go back to the same source, but it was a very long time ago. And so most of us can't really claim any longer that our roots are from Catholic because of how long ago it really was.
How far east is Eastern Catholics? Is that like Russian Orthodox or
Greek?
Greek
Yeah.
Orthodox? Okay.
Mhm.
Russia's farther east than Greece.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, in the Orthodox, you've got, the Orthodox split because of the way that you look at the Holy Spirit. And so depending on, and I'm trying to think of the Greek word, but of course I can't think of it right now. Depending on how you view the Holy Spirit. Does the Holy Spirit proceed from the Father and the Son, or just proceed from the Father? They split over that. Okay? So, all right, and then you've also got ones, if you look on page 113, you've got Celtic Christianity, you've got Augustine of Canterbury, who really was quite a wonderful missionary. He left Rome under the auspices of Pope Gregory, and he went to England and introduced Christianity to England, and there again, 597. And so you have England becoming Catholic. Okay. So now we're back to Elizabeth. Okay, so if you look at the picture on page 115, you will see Henry's 6 wives. Okay, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. It's easy to remember. My mother taught it to me, and so it's very easy to remember. Okay, look on page 117. Middle way between Catholics and Protestants. You have the theologian Richard Hooker. I do not recommend trying to read Richard Hooker. I have read portions of Richard Hooker and what his theologies were and how he diagnosed the church and what he thought and everything. And after about 2 pages, you would turn the book and throw it into the fireplace. It is very hard to read in our 21st century mindset. But he was a major theologian in that time because he really was the one who set the stage for England to become Anglican. Okay, for England to be the middle way, as it were. Okay? You've got the 1559 prayer book. Okay? And then you've also got 1570 excommunicated from Rome. Rome excommunicated Church of England. Okay? Thanks to Henry, all of that happened. Okay. So, how did the Church of England come to the United States?
Why did it take so long? I mean, they excommunicated Henry a lot. How can you excommunicate a church? I thought you excommunicated people.
You did, but he excommunicated the whole church.
The Pope did in 1570.
Just said, you are no longer part of the Roman Catholicism, Roman Empire. You are no longer able to come to us for any disputes.
If you worshipped at the Church of England, then you would not be able to worship in the Catholic Church.
Correct. You would be, the word that we would use nowadays is anathema. You would be out, just completely out.
Because there certainly were still Englishmen who were Catholic. And I mean, so you had the Lords Baltimore came over to Maryland, and they were Catholic instead of a colony here. So presumably they managed to get back in good graces with.
I think there was probably pockets.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, in any country, not everybody is going to be the same. I mean, all you have to do is look at Maryland, just a state, and you've got all of these different churches, all of these different ways of thinking, all of these different religions, and, you know, everybody can work together if they want to. It didn't work for a while in England because you had all of these influences of Catholicism and Protestantism that were trying to get Elizabeth to pay attention to them, and she finally created what we now know as Ethel via media. It's your word for the night. Okay, how did the Church of England come to the United States? Just guess.
On a
Like
boat.
everything else.
On a boat, there we go, very good, good.
Like everybody else on my boat.
I haven't gotten anything right tonight, I'm doing history. I
You're
was
doing
ready.
great, you're batting 100.
100.
1,000.
1,000, whatever. On a boat. That's really about it. That's the first thing I did.
think of.
And why did the Church of England come to America? Why did they come to the United States?
Because they heard the road was paved with gold.
Well, you're probably not too far off.
They realize England is finite, it's small, it's
Mhm.
not getting any bigger.
So they could worship as they pleased.
Mhm. They could worship as they pleased.
No. They could do
Hard.
that. If you were Anglican, you could worship just fine in England.
Right, but you could also worship here without having to rub elbows too much with Roman Catholicism. Granted, you have Catholics in the area. So think about,
But, I mean, you didn't have too much, the problem in England was not Catholics by that point, by the time they were coming here, it was, the Calvinists.
But many people immigrated to the United States for religious freedom when the colonies were just starting.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But,
So why not?
think about the names of the states. Maryland, who is Maryland named after?
Mary.
Mary. Well, Lord Baltimore, but Mary,
okay, what,
okay,
what-
Roman
Mary's
Catholic
land,
colony.
named after Mary, the mother of Jesus, presumably.
No,
No.
named after Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet not.
I
We
bet
have
so.
Prince George.
She was queen, right?
Why do you doubt it?
Well,
Because
because,
there.
I mean, gee whiz, by this point, she was not popular.
No,
in England.
but Maryland began as a Roman Catholic colony.
Right.
Okay.
Don't you think Roman Catholics revere the mother of Jesus?
Yeah, but they probably were, whatever.
But the mother of Jesus wasn't around to give them benefits, so they
It was
probably
still
were
a
paying
British
tribute
colony.
to their queen, right?
But she wasn't
So
around.
what's the state just right next to Maryland? Virginia.
Virginia.
Who is Virginia
That's it, yeah.
named after? Elizabeth. Why?
Because she was the virgin.
Virgin Queen.
Yeah.
That was
Oh.
his,
What?
that was his ringer.
I thought it was a dog.
It was.
Queen?
Nice
Okay.
Was
ringtone.
that a dog?
Is that
It
true?
was
She
his
the
fault.
virgin?
It was his
No.
fault.
Oh.
Took me a second, but then he started moving, I'm like, nope, the sound is moving too.
She managed
I
to
missed
still
that. What did I
maintain that